views and opinions expressed on Explorers Seekers of the Truth or that of their guests or contributors are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. All information on Explorers Seekers of the Truth is provided in good faith. However, we make no representation or warranty of any kind, express or implied, regarding the accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, availability, or completeness of any information on this talk show or website.
From monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings, join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms, seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
There it is. Welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 59. Tonight, as always, I'm joined by my best friend and co-host, and the first one of the two of us always to be late.
That is true. That is true.
How are you doing tonight, buddy?
Very good. Very good. Pushed it to the last minute, but I made it, and we are live. That's why we didn't have our little thumbnail display when we did the intro. It was just us kind of doing our thing in the background as the audio played. But, you know, you have that every now and again. So, you know, it's all right. How are you doing?
Not too bad. I got poison ivy and it's driving me nuts. But besides that, I'm good.
Yeah, poison ivy is no fun. That's for sure. Is that still from the last time you had it?
Like a week ago.
Ugh. Hey.
Yeah.
You want me to do my normal shtick on where to reach us?
Yeah, tell the folks where they can find us as I twist myself in cables.
There you go. There you go. You could reach us as you view the show live on either Facebook or YouTube. I see Rick Russell is tuned in saying, hi, guys. Hey, Rick, thanks for joining in. You could comment underneath the show under either platform, and we'll see the comments live, and hopefully we could respond and get back to your comment, or at least reply to it or make a comment along with it. You could get us on Twitter or X at Explorers Group, on our website, explorersgroup.com. You could go to the live show tab there and catch up on some of our old shows. And I don't know, for those of you who have been following our Facebook page, we are now starting to load our archived shows on Spotify podcast. So you can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Amazon Music. You can find us on Apple Podcast and Google Play, or whatever it's called, Google Podcast. So we're on all those different outlets. So you could find us out there, or just go to our Facebook page and click directly from one of those links, because I think you have to reach a certain level before you could search the name, because I was having difficulty searching our name through those different podcast platforms. So I think we have to reach a certain level before we're searchable. But go to our Facebook page, Explorers Group, facebook.com/Explorers Group, I think it is. And you could find all the links that we have to those different platforms. And you can listen to our old shows on the go at your leisure. I got to get my computer plugged in here. Sorry. Yeah. So, yeah, you could find us on all those. And that about wraps it up, sums up all the how to reach.
Okay, cool. So tonight we're going to talk about the Bridgewater Triangle. And before we get into that, a couple weird facts that Lauren Coleman actually posted today was Renee DeHinden was born 8/22/1930. Peter Byrne was born 8/22/1925. Bernard Hoovelman died on 8/22.
Interesting.
That was just weird.
Yeah. Well, Renee DeHinden and what do you say, Peter Byrne?
Yeah.
Two of the four original, the four horsemen, or the godfathers of Sasquatchery, the four horsemen of Sasquatchery, as some people call them. So DeHinden and Peter Byrne actually just recently passed away on July 28th, like you had said. He was the last of the four original members or founding fathers of Bigfootery, and really who pushed Bigfoot research into the forefront, I guess, or into the eyes of mainstream media. And Peter, God rest his soul, he was doing it up until the day he died, and I think he was in his late 90s when he passed away. So hats off to him, and
Yeah, it was
you
just
know, our
shy of
condolences.
100.
Yeah, our condolences to his
1925 to
family.
23.
Yeah, 2 years away, so he's like 98. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So give us some basic details about the area, Les.
I will, but hey, Norm, good to see you, buddy. I know Norm he commented there on YouTube. Um, he was one who had requested us to do the Bridgewater Triangle, him and my buddy Fred. So as Chad had mentioned, we are going to be talking about the Bridgewater Triangle tonight. And to give a little bit of an idea of what the triangle is, um, the Bridgewater Triangle is an area of about 200 square miles, or 200 or 520 kilometers, within southeastern Massachusetts in the United States. And its specific boundaries of the Bridgewater Triangle were first described by cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, who coined the term in the 1970s, and later in his book Mysterious America, which I have right here. If you guys want to pick that up, it's actually a pretty good book. It's got a lot of good information, and my microphone's falling down. Gosh. So anyways, like I was saying, in his book, it includes the towns of Abington, Freetown, and Rehoboth at the angles of the triangle.
Cool.
Pretty much sums it up.
You know, from some of the research with Roswell, we were talking about kind of with being a hotbed, but it's not just a hotbed of like UFO. It's, you know, cryptids, but also like the paranormal, and you know, even the Lizzie Borden house falls inside that triangle.
Yes.
So I mean, you have a lot of just weird phenomena, you know,
Yep.
cryptozoology, paranormal, ufology. So it's pretty interesting.
I cannot get this thing to stay where I want it. This microphone's all over the place tonight.
Well, that's because you put that nice little Explorers logo on the back of it now.
Yeah, you know, and I think I screwed it up. Leave it to me to do a simple task and make it more difficult than it needs to be. But yes, got the little logo on the back of the microphone there. From MikePlates.com, actually. So yeah, like Chad was saying, the triangle is a bit of a melting pot of strange phenomenon. The area is known for like an array of mysterious events, ranging from, like Chad had said, there's UFOs, there's mysterious cats, hellhounds, thunderbirds, ghosts, goblins, and of course, one of my personal favorites, Bigfoot. So we'll touch base on a few of these topics tonight, but I mean, we're not going to cover all of them because we would need more than an hour in order to cover all these topics. But what makes it interesting is most, if not all, of these accounts, excuse me, are centered around the Hockomock Swamp, which is in the center of the triangle. And the Hockomock Swamp is a vast wetland, it encompassing much of the northern part of the southeastern Massachusetts, and it's about 16,950 acres of land area, and it's considered the largest freshwater swamp in the state, and it also acts as a natural flood control mechanism for the region. Just some tidbits there.
Some little side bits.
Little side bits.
Things. You know, so according to Lauren Coleman's book, Mysterious America, the word Hockomock is an Algonquin word which translates to devil.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are 10 places in the U.S. with the same name, 6 of them being in Maine, 2 in Massachusetts, 1 in New Jersey, and 1 also in Minnesota. But after researching the word a little further, he found another pronunciation, Hockamok, which translates in their language to evil spirit.
Interesting.
So, and like during the 17th century, the Hockomock Swamp was used as a fortress by the Wampanoag. I'm really trying to say these words.
No, that's right.
I know I've been studying.
God bless you, brother.
Yeah. But and this, even predating the actual tribe of natives in that area, or there was other early human settlement there.
Mhm. Oh yeah,
They
there's
found 8,000-year-old graves in the area.
yep.
So the natives use this area, kind of as a fortress, and it kept the invasion by the early English settlers down because they didn't want to, travel through the swamp. It also played a role in the what they call the King Philip War
Hmm.
as a strategic base of operations for the Wampanoag chief Metacomet,
Hmm.
also known as King Philip. So I will refer to him as King Philip from here on out.
Yeah.
You get one shot at me saying a word.
You nailed it, buddy.
Yeah. So, and it was used to launch assaults at the nearby English settlements. And what you got to think about these, the nearby English settlement at the point was the Plymouth colony
Hmm.
of the famous Plymouth Rock and the Pilgrims.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, I didn't remember who they were. So, also one of the things you got to think about is King Philip's War is actually the bloodiest war in U.S. or British history per capita.
Wow.
75% to 80% of natives were wiped out, and about 25% of the colonists were also killed during this.
Jeez.
And of course, this isn't your traditional war where two armies face off. This was raids on villages,
More
settlements.
like guerrilla warfare, kind of.
Yeah, where they were
Yeah.
taking people or killing them.
Right.
There was no in between really. There was no non-combatives. Like you
Right.
didn't
Right.
spare the women and children.
Yeah. There was no art of war in this. There were
Yeah.
no. Yeah.
And during like the 18th and 19th century, the Euro Americans they're becoming Americans, but they're not. America's not founded quite yet. Some
Right.
of this, they kind of deemed the swamp to be worthless and barren land, so they kind of wanted to start draining it and turn it into farmland.
Hmm.
And of course, the natives occupying this area for, gosh, at least, a couple hundred years, that group, but, up to 8,000 years, they placed a high value on this swamp.
Yeah.
And for, they use it for hunting, also probably for moving goods and stuff through from, village to village. They could use the waterway and all that. And they actually called the Hockomock the place where evil spirits dwell.
Hmm.
So it kind of serves a dual purpose because there is like the sacred burial grounds. It is a great hunting area. And also, one of the things with Hockomock is Hobomok,
Hmm.
which the Wampanoag actually worshipped and feared as their chief deity of death and disease.
So Hobomok wasn't the swamp; it was uh,
Yeah.
like a god.
Yeah, but yeah, God. Yeah, pretty much a god. And it was basically their kind of, folklore legend on it is it's composed of human souls of the dead
Hmm.
and was known to congregate in areas like the Hockomock. I just
Okay.
screwed that one up. And thus the term, became kind of interchangeable among non-natives when referring to the swamp or to the spirits.
All right. So to non-natives, Hockomock and Hobomok were one and the same, but to the natives, Hockomock was the swamp, Hobomok was the deity.
Yeah.
Okay. Just trying
Yeah.
to
So,
wrap my brain around that one.
see, it's probably one of those things where the settlers heard the name, from one group as one thing,
Hmm.
heard the legend, they kind of said, "Oh, isn't that kind of the same word or the
Yeah.
same?"
Yeah. Just kind of lumped it,
Yeah, and they kind of
whitewashed it into, just made it
yeah,
whatever they wanted it to be.
yeah, it becomes the same, term to them. So you had all this fighting between the natives and the settlers, which drove the natives into the swamp. and then thousands, die. I think they said somewhere about 3,000 natives and about 500 settlers.
Mm.
When the
Which
king
sounds
was
like a huge difference. But if you think about it, the natives at that time probably vastly outnumbered the colonists. So, 500 colonists, or 25% of them, was a big hit. Even
Mhm.
though, what would you say, there was 75% of the
75%
natives?
of
So, I
natives.
mean, that's big, but there's probably a lot more of them left than the colonists. So it was probably a bigger hit on the colonists, if you think about it.
Yeah, well, and the colonists, you know, they're at a disadvantage at that point,
Mhm.
losing 500, where the natives, everybody kind of shared in responsibility and the knowledge.
Right.
When you had 500 of the colonists, you're looking at maybe the two people who know how to properly farm a certain type of soil.
Mhm.
Now, one of them might be dead or both of them may be dead.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah, it's definitely a bigger hindrance to the colonists. But now, like when the king was found and killed,
Mhm. King Philip.
King Philip, yeah,
Mhm.
his wife and kids were sold off into slavery, according to the legend. I mean, there's
Uh-huh.
no, concrete evidence that that's who these people were, but this is,
Yeah.
the legend of it all. One of the English traditions was to behead the person and then mount their head on a pike outside of the like town hall, fort, or castle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So his head was on display on a pike outside of the fort in that area.
You said 20 years.
20 years.
Jeez.
Yeah. And so this, some of the people theorize, like, is this what breathed the life into the supposed curse put on the land by him, or was this already kind of a area and the reason for the war was the area, like the area was already evil in a sense,
Yeah.
or
Or spiritually charged.
yeah, led to
Yeah.
this kind of stuff. But he did actually curse the land, according to legend, for future people who enter into it.
Ah.
So at least that's the lore of it all on that end of it.
Yeah, because looking into this, there were all sorts of different endings to this, or possibilities. So it's like we just chose the one that we that we found. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it is odd. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and you don't really know which is actually true or not, like you said. So
Yeah, because I mean, first-hand accounts of the legend would be one thing, but we are
hundreds of years beyond.
500 years almost or something like that. It was probably 1600s, 400 to 2000. Oh yeah, 2000. I'm sorry, not it's not 21,000.
A lot.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
least
A lot.
400.
Yeah.
So I just want to say this real quick. Puck wedgie. Sorry, I just had to be the first one to say that in this
Yeah.
episode.
It is a fun word to say. It is a fun word to say.
I think
And
it's my new favorite, like cryptid little monster thing.
just because it's so fun to say.
Yeah,
And speaking of Pukwudgie and the natives of the area, the Pukwudgie is a creature from the Algonquin lore. The local Wampanoag people consider them to be dangerous tricksters. They've been especially associated with the Freetown State Forest within the Bridgewater Triangle. So
yeah.
there's a little inhabitant area info of the Pukwudgie.
So, kind of give you a definition or a translation of puck wedgie,
Hmm.
was done by Henry Schoolcraft,
Hmm.
and basically translated out to little man of the woods that vanishes.
Hmm.
And it's said to be like a human like creature of Wampanoag folklore. And it's found in Delaware and Prince Edward Island also. And it's said to be between 2 and 3 foot tall.
So a little guy, a little goblin. But according to legend, the Pukwudgie can appear and disappear at will. It shape shifts, of which the most common form is a creature that looks like a porcupine from the back and half troll, half human from the front and walks upright bipedally. And it lures people to their death. It can use magic. It could launch poisonous arrows and it can create fire. And Native Americans believed that Pukwudgies were once friendly to humans, but then they turned against them and are best left alone. And according to lore, a person who annoyed a Pukwudgie would be subject to nasty tricks by it, or subject to being followed by the Pukwudgie who would cause trouble for them. They're known to kidnap people, push people off cliffs, attack their victims with short knives and spears, and use sand to blind their victims. And OS says skinwalker type. Yes, kind of like a skinwalker, like a shapeshifter. And hey, Pax, thanks for tuning in. Got a lot of people coming in here. And Norm says Lizzie Borden house is right up the street from his. I'm sleeping over, Norm, just so you know. Hey, Cindy, good to see you. Thanks for tuning in.
I just want to know if when it uses sand to blind the victims, does it go pocket sand and throw it inside?
That would be awesome. Pocket sand.
Yeah. So now the Pukwudgies are said to be the enemies of cultural heroes Mashahop and Granny Squinit.
Squanit.
Sorry if anybody knows how to pronounce those right, but
I think it's close.
Those two I couldn't find anybody ever saying in the history of man.
Right.
So one story from the Wampanoag folklore explains that they began causing mischief and torment of the natives out of jealousy of the devotion and affection natives had for Mashahop, who eventually exiled them to a different part of North America. The Pukwudgie have since been hostile to humans and taken revenge by killing Mashahop's 5 sons. Some variations even suggest that they had killed Mashahop himself.
Interesting. Well, I saw, and actually, Pax has a question down there. Didn't Small Town Monsters do a documentary on the Bridgewater Triangle? I don't know. I know Small Town Monsters, they cover a whole lot of everything in the cryptozoological, ufology, paranormal. They cover a lot. So I could venture a guess and say maybe, probably, but I don't know. If they did, I want to watch it because I love the stuff that they do. But I did see an interesting eyewitness report on while I was doing my research on the Bridgewater Triangle, and one of the documentaries I watched. There was an eyewitness report, and the story, to me, it sounds like it could be very similar to a Pukwudgie in both the lore of the Pukwudgie and the way the eyewitness had described it looking. And the eyewitness was William Russo, and his story, and I'll relay it kind of how he said it, was back in 1990. He worked a 3 to midnight shift. When he got home from work, he would take his dog Samantha, which was like a 90-pound Rottweiler Shepherd mix, out for a walk. And he said usually they would walk the sidewalks down into town, but this night they took a different route, which he states he doesn't know why. They just ended up taking that new route, and they went to an area called the High Tees, and this is an area called that because of the high tension wires that ran through that area. And he said it's a clear-cut road for the power lines, and they're lined by high brush and tall pine trees. And they walked for about a half a mile, and he came to an old water wheel that used to power an ironworks factory that stood there many, many years ago. And he said, at that point, there was just a single street light near the road, and it would shine a light in about a 10-foot diameter ring of light. And he said, as he approached the light, his dog Sammy started pulling at the leash. He looked down and saw that she was shaking. And after a few moments later, he said he heard what was scaring his dog. He said it was a high pitch, almost like a wailing sound. And he said the sound went, "E want you, Kier, Kier." And he said this made the hair on the back of his neck stand on end, and his dog shook even more in terror. And then he said suddenly he saw something walk into the light of the street lamp. And like Chad had explained with the Pukwudgie, This thing was about 3 to 4 feet tall, so it was small like the Pukwudgie, covered in 3 to 4 inch long hair, and walked bipedally. So again, short, hair covered creature, bipedal creature, very Pukwudgie like. He said the eyes were slightly large for its head, but not too disproportionate. And the face, he said, looked like a chipmunk, which I thought was kind of interesting. And again, the Pukwudgie said it was kind of porcupine looking, hedgehog looking, chipmunk. I don't know. Maybe that there's a similarity there. I don't know. And at first he thought it was a child, but after he looked more closely, he stated it looked at it as if it was in the beginning stages of old age, and it was not young. So he goes on to say that it was speaking and it kept saying "E want you, Kier, Kier," and it got more insistent. Then it started beckoning him, "Kia, Kia," he was saying, and it wasn't threatening, but it was weird. But what was weird, he said, is that it was like motioning him with its hand. It didn't advance towards him, but it was almost like trying to lure William to go to where the creature was in the light. And he admits that he was too scared to approach the creature, and I mean, rightfully so. And then he took his dog, turned around, and went home at a rapid pace. After he sat up for the rest of the night, kind of overanalyzing the situation in his head, he said he felt as if it was speaking a crude form of English and was actually saying what he was saying, "E want you, is we want you, come here, come here." So it was almost like Chad said with the Pukwudgie lore, is they were possibly at one point humans or human-like, and they had a relationship with humans, so they're able to kind of understand human dialect, and but then they would lure people away, they would trick them, they would try and make them follow them, and either follow them to their death or to harm or something like that. So I just thought that that story, when I heard it, like some people are trying to lump it into a little Bigfoot category, but I don't know. To me, based off the lore of the Pukwudgie, this sounded very Pukwudgie like to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Even kind of similar to like fairy
Yep, like the
folklore.
the Fae, yeah,
So
fairy folk. Yeah, very, very reminiscent to that. So
yeah. So much like our last 3 episodes, this area does have UFOs as well.
mhm.
And as I stated in my theory in part 3 of the Roswell incident, this area too has several stones with odd petroglyphs.
Mhm.
One of them being actually brought up in episode 3 was Dington Rock, located at the southern edge of the triangle, and it sits on a riverbank across from the grassy island Indian burial ground.
Right. Yep.
And of course, the rock is covered with patterns of carvings, hieroglyphs. Various national groups have interpreted these carvings in a manner that supports each group's contention that the pilgrims or explorers of the nationalities that were there for settling the area.
Mhm.
And it actually is in a small museum now, and it's one of the main attractions in Delbar State Park.
Yeah. And another interesting note, talking about rocks with, carvings and petroglyph type things. There are numerous rocks like that throughout the state park, and I don't know if it's just Delbar State Park, but there's a few different parks within the Wampanoag or the Hockomock Swamp area, and there's a lot of stones there that have what look like faces, spirit rocks they were called. There was another one with
Hand,
a hand on it, yep, and then
yeah.
there's another with a face carved in, so there's a lot of odd things, and nobody knows where they actually originated. One stone actually had a poem carved into it that nobody knows where it came from, and it was basically like, "Any weary traveler who comes this way, listen to my poem and be at peace from it," and stuff like that. I can't remember it word for word, but there is a lot just odd, and I think it stems to both the native inhabitants of that area as well as the early settlers that were starting to colonize that land as well. So
Yeah.
so it does go to the Charlesworth theory of part 3 of the Roswell incident
Yeah.
about the the areas with the petroglyphs throughout the United States and the world.
Yeah, there's a profile, or I think it's called Profile Rock, which
Yep.
might be in Freeman State Park up there.
Yeah.
Much like the Indian Head Rock off of 61.
Yep.
You just catch it on the right angle and it looks like a head. I
Yep.
mean, of course, in our area, they painted it to actually look like an Indian head years ago.
Yep.
So with all that, you have a well-documented 1908 UFO encounter that happens over Bridgewater. And basically the newspapers report a mysterious balloon over Bridgewater. And you also have the report of 2 carriage-riding undertakers report seeing UFO on Halloween night. And they described it as an unusually bright lantern in the sky above the region. And, they say mysterious balloon basically being the only description for something flying that they would have at that time.
Right.
I know some of the things with the undertakers, they were questioned like in a follow-up or in that original like storytelling of it. And basically they had said the way it moved and it spun in circles and it had light and it would get brighter and dimmer and then change directions, it would hover, it would fly a little bit. And so
totally out of the norm from what they're used to during that time.
So the 1970s, of course, 1970s, I think everywhere is a very high UFO activity time.
Yes.
I mean, Pennsylvania at one point between I think 1970 and 1976 had led the country in UFO and Bigfoot sightings.
Oh yeah, the whole Kecksburg stuff that's in all Stan Gordon's books and his research.
So sightings along Route 44 in Ram and Taunton happen very often. The spring of 79 proved to be the most active period of UFO in the Bridgewater region. And basically this one is really kind of sticks out because it is 2 former reporters from it's WHBH in that area. It's a television station. And it was Steve Scarbisi and Jerry Lopez. And they claimed that they had observed a UFO in the area of the Raham dog track. When they had gotten off Route 24 onto Route 76, they noticed a bright light over the tree line. And when the light started getting closer and closer, it got bigger and bigger. They pulled Jerry's vehicle over. When the stars were blotted out by something in the shape of basically an arrow, or I've heard them describe it as like home plate on a baseball field with a light on it.
I think there was lights around the perimeter as well.
Yeah, I know the one demonstration they had done, the illustration they shows it with lights around the perimeter and a main spotlight almost.
Yep.
And a cable or something coming off of it that was kind of emitting like a greenish glow to it.
Yeah, like sparks, I think they were saying too, right?
They were saying, and then they also said it was like the width of 5 747 wingspans.
Like tip to tip.
Tip to tip to tip to
That's
tip.
freaking
tip to tip.
Huge.
Yeah. But if you think about it in the terms of like the Phoenix Lights, kind of about the same size.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Arrow head. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So they also, like they were saying, there was something hanging, it was emitting sparks. And at one point, Jerry felt it was close enough for him to throw a rock and hit it. So this is something
that's got to be terrifying. If it's that big and you think you could chuck a rock and hit it, I'd have been like peeing my pants.
And also, one of the things that they kind of always gloss over is that Jerry was actually an Air Force veteran. And one of the things, the conversation between the two gentlemen was, he basically turned and looked at Steve and said, whatever that is, it's not ours.
Right.
And they said it hovered over a field for a few minutes and then just took off. And, they kind of put it out there, and then over the course of the next couple of weeks, a lot more people acknowledged seeing it, and eyewitness encounters of the same object were submitted both to the radio and to the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And so you definitely, that's one of those ones that has a high number of eyewitnesses. The thing about the two TV people seeing it is, yes, it could be a stunt by the television station to draw attention, get viewers, but it would hurt their careers.
Right.
You know, coming forward and saying we saw this and we were eyewitnesses to it would truly hurt their careers moving into their next contract, you know, and neither one of them are with that station anymore. So
yeah,
you got to think they were career-minded people. And I know from working in television, those people are looking to always move ahead.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
they're not going to put themselves in a bad situation.
Right. And well, I guess that's after so many people started coming out with it. That's when they finally decided to share their story.
Mm-hmm.
But, and you know, it's funny you mentioned the random dog track, and Norm, maybe you could help us out on this one since you're kind of local up in that area. And you also mentioned the reports of orbs. That was one of the other things that they said. This dog track, for whatever reason, seems to be an area with a lot of activity. There were a lot of UFO reports over top of the dog track, not just from Steve and Jerry's reports. Orbs, I guess there's train tracks behind the dog track, and there was orbs all over the tracks back there that people would see floating towards them, and then they would just disappear. They were almost like they thought they were, you know, hunters with lanterns or flashlights or something, and then they get super close and all of a sudden disappear, or they just start floating away in like an odd pattern that clearly couldn't be a person walking around. So I'm interested to learn more about that racetrack area and get the history on that, but that's something we could do for another show. We didn't have enough time for that tonight. But so we covered the UFO, and now we're going to start talking a little bit about some of the cryptid creatures that have been seen in that area. And Norm, you're bringing up a lot of stuff here in the comments that we're going to be touching base on. But in 1988, two boys followed a pair of giant three-toed footprints into the swamp. And to their horror, they came upon a massive bird-like creature that neither had ever witnessed before in their lives. The winged monster caught a glimpse of the two boys and took off straight into the air. The frightened youths ran for their lives, later ranting their story to police and neighbors. It was concluded that the two youths witnessed a great blue heron, a very large bird native to the New England area and the swamp. The children swore the creature they saw was much larger than a heron, being more the size of a tall man with half human-like features, which makes it very interesting, almost Mothman-like.
Yeah. I was actually looking at some of the comments and questions here, and let's see here. In Virginia, I don't know. I know of a few UFO reports. I don't necessarily know of any areas of like multiple areas of high strangeness. Now, I've only lived here for 9 years, so I'm not well versed necessarily in geography of the state. I'm sure if you head towards like the coast, the Great Dismal Swamp, I'm sure there's probably some legends there, you know, of different things, will-o'-the-wisp and all that. But yeah, I just saw OS had that comment there, and I just wanted to address a lack of knowledge on that one. But, you know, these stories are almost laughable, you know, in a lot of ways until you start to hear someone remembered another similar sighting. And of course, this one was by a well-respected and notable Norton police sergeant named Thomas Downey. So in 1971, as a sergeant, Downey was driving home along Winter Street in Marshfield, and he came upon a giant creature standing at the edge of the swamp. According to the officer, it resembled a bird, but stood over 6 foot tall. The creature moves towards the car, and then fly straight up and away from the vehicle. Said the wingspan had to be 8 to 12 feet in length, and when other officers arrived at the scene, a few large three-toed footprints were found as evidence of the creature.
Hmm.
And oddly enough, the sighting took place at a place called Bird Hill, which was where the indigenous people of that area had spoke frequently of the legendary Thunderbird dwelling, and actually kind of why the even anglicized name of the thing of that area is called Bird Hill was because that's what the natives referred to it, and the folklore and legend that went behind it was basically that of what we know now as a Thunderbird. I'm sure maybe they had a different term for it in Algonquin,
Right.
but and they always claim that like their ancestors claimed these giant birds lived in the swamp, and to this day they may apparently still do, or at least up until the 70s
Right.
or 80s when the kids saw it.
What I find interesting though is a lot of the other Thunderbirds reports, like Ken Gerhardt has a book dedicated to the Thunderbirds. But most of them are more just like birds that are freakishly large. What I find interesting about these two reports is these seem far more Mothman-like than just Thunderbird because of the half man or man-like shapes and features that they were describing. So I find that pretty interesting, how it's not your typical Thunderbird representation or description, and it's more Mothman-like or winged cryptid, if you will. But the Thunderbirds are actually not solely responsible for the cryptid sightings within the Bridgewater Triangle. A more famous and often talked about monster is reported to roam the area, and it's the creature affectionately known as Bigfoot, Yeti, Sasquatch, however you want to call it. So in 1970, residents reported seeing a hairy 7-foot monster running through their yards, sometimes, interestingly, on all 4 legs. That's not uncommon for some Bigfoot reports. So there's several where people say it started off on all 4s and stood up, took off the rest of the way bipedally. So local state police conducted a lengthy manhunt for a giant bear, yet no such animal was ever spotted or captured. And on April 8th in 1970, 2 officers were parked in a police cruiser near the swamp. Suddenly, the rear end of the car lifted into the air and then dropped with a loud bang. The officers quickly spun the car around and trained their spotlight on something hairy resembling a bear as it ran on 2 legs behind a house. A thorough search again was done of the area, but no bear or any other creature was ever found.
Huh. And
Which
again,
I thought they were pretty good stories.
what was that?
Were you? Yeah, I think we were freezing out there for a second. Were you
Yeah.
able to hear me?
I didn't hear the last thing you said.
No, I just said that. I said those are 2 pretty interesting stories about the Bigfoot, which are again kind of common with the running on all 4s and then taking off.
Well, and again, 2 police officers
Mm-hmm.
who are making a report.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, again, credibility wise, 2 people who lose more by admitting to this than
Right.
especially in 1970. There's no television show that you could start now.
Right.
And also there's a story where a hunter once shot at a large animal in the woods that ran off, and as it ran off, it gave a half human, half animal cry. Later, he found brown hair and the path the creature had fled down. Also, a woman in West Bridgewater heard the noise one night in her yard. She looked out her window and saw a large bipedal creature eating pumpkins out of her garden. The hairy animal looked at her through the window with reddish orange eyes, and then with a grunt took off with the pumpkins into the woods.
That
So
would be awesome to see. Can you imagine?
yeah, until he decides to run the other way towards the window.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like, but it could just be a bear.
Could, but I mean, if this thing is running off into the woods bipedally holding pumpkins,
Yeah, but bears do. I mean, run. I mean, in that one zoo in China had to put out a thing where the bears are actual real bears because they
that's
stand
true.
upright all the time.
That's true. And there was that one bear in New Jersey where I guess it had some sort of an injury, and it still to this day it walks bipedally everywhere, and it's the most hysterical thing. It's just
Yeah.
this bear just do almost like a circus bear, kind of walking through all these people's yards where his little paws are up in front of it, and it's just do going on. It's so cool. But so you're right. It's not out of the question. It's not impossible, but it's not common for sure.
Hmm. Well, I always just think back to Yogi and Boo Boo.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
boo boo. How about a picnic basket?
They always walked upright. So
That's true.
now, one woman had actually reported finding a Bigfoot body along one of the riverbanks there.
See, that I find very intriguing, but those are one of those stories that to me it's too unbelievable because did I lose you? Are you still there? Did you?
I'm
Okay,
here.
you're
Can you hear
okay.
me?
Yeah, yeah. It looked like you froze for a second, but those are the reports that always kind of baffle me. It's like if you found a body, where's the body? You can't
Yeah.
just tell a story. Say, oh, I found a body and I didn't want to do anything about it. You know what I mean? It's like that's
Mhm.
the discovery of a lifetime.
Yeah. You would. I mean, even if it was 1970 something, you found a body. I mean, you think about what a lot of people describe seeing Bigfoot, and some people always say it has this human-esque quality to it.
Yeah, yeah.
The guy that got on Art Bell years ago, Coast to Coast AM, I want to say it was JC or something like that, claimed to have shot one in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And him and his buddy, like when they got up on it, it looked really human. So they actually buried it and like hid the facts and stuff like that for years. And then he got older, he admitted to it, supposedly sent Art Bell a map of it. So if you're walking, even if you found something that kind of sort of looked human along a riverbank, wouldn't your first call once you got home or got to a payphone, not knowing what year it was, would be to
Call the
the
police.
police?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, absolutely.
hey, you guys might want to go look at this. It could be, it could be nothing, or it could have been somebody messing around in a ape costume that drowned or was shot. To me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to say, oh, somebody found a body, but there's zero evidence of or substantial evidence to back that story up.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, I think if you ran into something like that along a riverbed, you'd probably have told some people where it was.
Right,
Now,
right.
could it have washed downriver? That's always a possibility.
Yeah.
But you would have at least been able to say, this stretch of the river between this creek and the big oaks, that's where I saw it.
Right, right.
People would have that kind of stuff in the story. So I don't know. That's always one of those ones that it's hit or miss. If you believe it, of course, then there's always the conspiracy. Well, they did call the police and the government came out and got it, and took it to a
The
lab.
men in black silenced
Yeah.
us and threatened us with death. Yeah, it's good to throw in just because it was a Bigfoot cryptid report, but at the same time, yeah, it's kind of, and OS has mentioned, if you found the body of Uncle Harry and Harry from Harry and the Hendersons, would you keep it quiet or go public? Myself, I would not go public. I would not want to be publicly criticized. Well, you could still report it anonymously, just so that way somebody could go out and make sure that it isn't a person or not. Now you do then run the risk of it being, retrieved and hidden away and whatever, and you're not going to know anything more about it. I myself, I would probably take as many pictures and videos as I can while I was there seeing it, just for my own peace of mind. Like, did I find a deceased human, or is this something else? I would probably do my own examination from a close distance, because I wouldn't want to contaminate the crime scene or put my DNA within that area. So yeah, I mean, like hair and stuff. I'm not,
Okay.
not into that necrophilia stuff, But
Well,
go ahead.
well, I was going to say, my thought on it is, if it's already dead,
Yes,
right? We did not cause its death.
right.
But if it led to the protection of the species, or the fact that, like, the species does exist,
Mhm.
like, it proves without a doubt that there are these large apes in North America, I think I would say yes, I would go public with it. I wouldn't try to make money off it. I would just go public, bring the body to Fish and Game or something like that, call the television crew, but it would maybe lead to the protection of the animal,
Yes, yes.
and also the acknowledgement that the animal is real. So I think it is, I can understand why you wouldn't, but I think, as somebody who's interested in this field, it's almost a duty or a responsibility
Mhm.
to help prove the existence.
Right, right,
And if you
right.
had that golden ticket, I think it would be a duty to go to the chocolate factory.
Yes, yes. Well, OS also brings up, would you take DNA as a to back up your claim? Again, I don't know. I don't know if I would, because look at all these people that submit DNA. I mean, they send it up to I can't remember that, Todd Disotell in, I think it's like the NYC, New York University or something like that. Problem with that is everything comes back as unknown primate or unknown human, or you know what I mean? It's kind of the same old song and dance at that point. So even if you did try and take some sort of, like, if you took a finger or a toe or something like that, or a swatch of hair, or something, um, where would it get you at that point? You know what I mean? Like, you could submit it for testing, you could do your due diligence, but if it comes back as unknown primate, you're still stuck in that category of unknown primate. And I've said
Yeah.
it on the show before. If you have all these samples coming in of an unknown creature, and or something that doesn't match anything in the database, but it comes up as unknown primate or human-like primate, can't you start calling that category Bigfoot? Like, you could use that as the base genome moving forward. So if one was found, then you could say, all right, well, we had all these samples come in that were unknown primate or Bigfoot X. Well, now we have the body, all these matched. So all these years people have been seeing and finding. So there's more credibility and more data points to back up
Mhm.
and protect the species.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think it's kind of would be a responsibility to bring the body forward. And I'm not saying, like, oh, I know there's been those people over the years that claim to have a body and then won $20,000 to show it. I mean, like, no, if you could move the body or secure the body in a certain area and then call Fish and Game and the news or something like that and get them to come get the body. And here's the thing, it may disappear a day after you do that and it's never spoken of again.
Right.
But
That's why I would take my own video evidence, and
Mhm.
maybe some hair, like OS said, maybe just
Yeah.
something as a little extra something. But I would try and document as much as I can without contaminating the
Mhm.
scene, because again, like I said, I wouldn't want to be, oh well, you were here, and that makes you a suspect or something, something stupid. I don't know, but I would take my own little bit of something, so that way if it was swept under the rug, or if it did leak out a little bit, and then they're like, local kook said that he found Bigfoot, but it was just a bear carcass, but he's trying to proclaim, then I'd be like, oh yeah, local kook's got this, and then all of a sudden it goes all over the internet, And you know what I mean? Now, I'm sure they
Yeah.
would still find 101 ways to make me look like an idiot at that point, which isn't really hard to do. But you know what I mean? They do whatever they could to discredit whatever you put out there. I mean,
Yeah.
government's good at making things disappear. But one last thing here within the cryptid field is within the swamp is Lake Nipponicket, which locals call the Nip. During the summer of 1980, a few miles northeast of Raynham, several local men in a canoe sighted a small red-haired chimpanzee-like ape creature. They said it walked upright on the island in the middle of the lake. They grounded the canoe and went in search of the creature, only to come up empty-handed. So I thought that was kind of cool because they said it was chimpanzee human-like, but more the coloration of an orangutan. So I don't know, still pretty cool.
Yeah. Did you see that video where they're giving orangutan video games to play? And they're doing the news report, and the orangutan is standing up against the glass, just staring, and all of a sudden it's like looking at the camera, and then it's looking at the reporter, and then it looks back at the camera with these psychotic eyes and just starts smiling. It's like cute but creepy at the same time. Like
they are
it just says
super intelligent. You don't know what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's the joke is always if that glass breaks, we're all doomed.
Oh God, yeah, for sure, for sure. I like Norm's comment there. If he found something in the woods in his travels, he's calling Les. He's calling me. So I don't know how I could help you there, Norm, but I appreciate that. So,
Okay.
All right. So what's the next topic that we're going to cover here?
This is comes from the Rehoboth Seekonk line. It's known as the red-headed hitchhiker. And this is perhaps one of the most outlandish, crazy Bridgewater Triangle legends. And it is that of a red-headed hitchhiker. And the legend goes that people who drive near the Rehoboth Seekonk line on Route 44 after dark may encounter a man with his thumb stuck out looking for a ride. And of course, the hitchhiker is described as a red-headed man.
Fellow ginger.
Usually seen wearing flannel and blue jeans, and sometimes is reported as having been seen on the side of the road, but also in the reflection of the windshield. So basically, this story is a Les, where were you during these times?
I no comment.
But it's basically every hitchhiker folklore. I was listening to a guy talk about it, and he's like, it's anything from pull alongside the road, turn off your headlights, beep your horn 3 times, turn on your headlights, and he's standing there.
Peach Mountain.
Yeah.
Peach Mountain, like local, or Gordon Mountain, whatever. I guess it's
Gordon Mountain,
right?
Yeah.
Gordon Mountain.
No, Peach is actually a different mountain.
Well, we hit both up. I know that much. And it's kind of the same thing, right? You remember Peach Mountain was you drive up to the lady's house who was raped and murdered and dumped in the well. You drive in front of her house, flash a light 3 times, beep 3 times, and supposedly she comes in, feels the face of the people in the car, anybody with a scar she kills, or I don't know.
Yeah. But it's every Phantom hitchhiker, which we have covered in a past episode.
Yeah.
So
What was the one? Something Mary?
Resurrection Mary.
Resurrection Mary. Yeah. Same
at the
thing.
cemetery. Yep. In Hawaii. I mean, there's these Phantom hitchhiker stories from pretty much if there's a road. I mean, I know of one out in Australia in the Blue Mountains, the Phantom hitchhiker story.
Yep.
You know, anywhere there's a road and traveling, there's probably some local folklore legend of a Phantom hitchhiker.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So, well, you have the Phantom hitchhikers sticking with the paranormal stories. And Norm brought up the orbs and everything in the comments. So another Orby kind of thing is every January, and Norm, maybe you could back me up on this one, buddy. Every January, spook lights have been reported, and they're described as being unexplained, elusive balls of light, and they've been seen hovering over the train tracks that run behind, again, the Raynham dog track, which I had mentioned earlier, and throughout the swamp. One of the stories was there was, I think they called it the Indian Bridge, that was in part of the Hockomock Swamp. A couple of guys were walking back through there. They were on top of the Indian Bridge, and they said they saw 3 or 4 orbs traveling down the creek. And again, they thought it was some hunters in a canoe. As it got closer, the orbs started to kind of swirl around and then floated up and dissipated. So, and the spirits, also another paranormal story, the spirits of the last members of King Philip's Wampanoag warriors were reported to haunt Anawan Rock, located along Route 44 in Rehoboth. 2 weeks after the death, and I guess the history of these warriors is 2 weeks after the death of the Wampanoag chief Metacomet, or King Philip, in the closing days of King Philip's War. Colonial leader Captain Benjamin Church led a raiding team into the wilderness of the Plymouth colony, and their mission was to basically mop up the last native resistors in the area. And they tracked them to the location known as Anawan Rock, and these warriors were led by Chief Metacomet's loyal war chief, and the last band of the warriors surrendered peacefully at that rock, and that they said was what kind of marked the end of that war. So their spirits are supposedly haunting that rock.
Well, and just to touch on that a little bit, the reason that these spirits who had surrendered peacefully are there was because Church had went back to Plymouth itself, and when he returned, the war chief that was in the place of Metcommon, his head was also on a pike.
Oh,
yeah. So they had surrendered peacefully. Yeah, he had surrendered peacefully and turned over the wampum belt.
Yeah. I knew there was more to this story. I knew you would do it. You're such a better researcher than me.
He had turned the belt over to Church, and of course the belt disappears sometime shortly after that. But when he returned, he found the chief who he had promised, this is the end. We'll negotiate a peace. We'll resettle you somewhere. He found his head on a pike.
Right.
And so one of the legends is basically they haunt that area until the wampum belt is returned.
That's right. Ah, yeah. See, you're so good.
And there have been, even in the different areas inside the triangle, there's been several reports of people seeing phantom fires.
Yeah.
People seeing them, off in a distance, or when they see him off. One of the stories was like a lady had parked her car and she saw like a fire on one of the little islands out in the nip. And when she took her canoe out to it, it was completely nothing there. There was no smoldering. There was no footprint. She thought it was a party.
Right.
She just thought it was some people, were floating the river or the lake or whatever. And they decided to camp out there and they were having a party. So she kind of like took her canoe out like, hey, maybe I can, hang out with these people. And when she got out there was nothing.
Yeah.
So, and some people see them in the woods, like almost like a campfire, but they, there's no heat from them. There's no smell, smoke or anything cooking on them. And they always, they're always near the swamp or some of the rocks and some of the islands out in these waterways. And, there's never any real explanation for them. Like people are seeing these things, they get out. I mean, people are saying like they're seeing like bonfires.
Right.
Like big bonfires. And they're like, oh, they head out to them thinking, oh, somebody's having a party. Let's go check it out. Or, oh, this must be the spot we're looking for. There's the bonfire, and they're heading out to it, and they're getting out there, and then where they think it is, it's gone, and yet it's not like, oh, the fire's 100 yards into the woods. You start walking, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, it must be 175.
Yep. Yeah, it just kept getting further and further.
Yeah, there's no source of a fire that you're seeing.
Right. Yeah, and you said that there was no smell of smoke or anything like that, right?
Yeah, no smell of smoke, no like smell of somebody cooking on them or anything like that. No even signs of them, like no smoldering ash, like somebody saw somebody coming and dumped out the fire quick, like a bush party for teenagers.
I
you
think
got
that would kind of freak me out more than actually seeing a ghost. Like, I don't know, like just like a freak fire out in the middle of nowhere and you get close and all of a sudden you're just left in the pitch black. That I think would scare me even more.
yeah, and there are some occult stories out there. So some from these unknowns in the triangle, there's a multitude of mysteries, occult activity.
Norm just brought a good point up here. He says you hear weird whistles in the Freetown forest when you walk or mountain bike. He said it's spooky. That's kind of interesting too, because a lot of correlation between whistling and Bigfoot reports that people say Bigfoot whistle almost
Mhm.
like, but it's not like a normal whistle. It's almost like a poor representation of a bird whistle almost, but it's they use these high pitch like whistle chirps to communicate. So I wonder if they're hearing Bigfoot.
You have to get Tom Seawood back on. Remember
Oh
he
God,
had the whistle sound and
dude,
stuff
when
that we
he
heard.
made that whistle noise, it took me right back to that sound I heard in the chestnut tree in the yard. That, oh God, that freaked me out.
Yeah.
But
And, there are occult activities, the satanic panic of the 70s and 80s,
yep.
even into the 90s. And, some people still say to this day, there have been signs of animal sacrifice, at least 3 human sacrifices
Hmm.
in this area.
Yeah, I think one of
Um,
those, there was a young woman, I want to say she was like early teens. They found her body tied to a tree, decapitated. A couple of boys did, and I think the cop that was on duty that night, actually, he was uh, involved in a lot of this occult stuff. He
yeah,
thought
he
because it
was.
was right after, it was like the day after Halloween or something like that, and he thought somebody had put a dummy or something out there. And then when he went out, he said the kids pointed up, they wouldn't go close to it, but they pointed up the hill, and sure enough, it was the decapitated body of a young woman tied to a. Oh God, that's heartbreaking.
Well, even there was a crypt broke into in the one cemetery where they stole the head, but as they were driving away, the head smelled so bad they had to throw it out, and then they
Yep.
admitted to what they did.
Yeah, they were admitting it was to get into a
Yeah,
satanic cult.
yeah.
Yeah.
Several of the cemeteries are alleged to be haunted, but also have had grave robbings
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And there are and still have a lot of satanic signs and
Oh man,
pentagrams
I
and
don't mean to cut you off, but Norm just said a friend of his was one of the kids that found that girl.
oh
That's messed up.
yeah
Norm,
um
you're a plethora of stories here, man. We need to get you on the show. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I
You're
was just
saying
saying
about
that
the
there are,
sigils and stuff.
throughout the state parks and the swamps they're still finding stuff. And you know this all just could be for show. You go into any abandoned building and there's going to be a pentagram painted on the wall.
Oh yeah,
There's
never
going to be
fails. Yeah.
666 painted on the wall.
Dude,
So
how many train trestles, in our areas growing up when we'd be out riding our bikes as kids and we'd go under a train trestle, there's always either a pentagram, a 666, an upside down pentagram or something like that. There's always
mm,
that kind of shit spray painted. And 90% of the time it was a bunch of idiot teenagers just, messing around. But
yeah
this here, that what was happening up in Massachusetts, especially like you said, the satanic panic of the 70s, that
yeah
was some actual hardcore shit going on up there. That was not for the faint of heart. That was serious business.
Yeah, I mean, well, also, when people say, "Oh, it's satanic," well, like the Church of Satan does not condone human
No. Yeah,
sacrifice.
no. This
They're
was
very
just,
much against it.
yeah, this was like, I don't even know if you'd want to call it satanic, you know what I mean? Because like you said, the satanic church isn't really like that. This is just evil. This is
Yeah,
just pure evil. This is dark magic shit.
yeah. But
Oh, Norm
so
lives 5 minutes away from the forest and 15 minutes from Hockomock. Norm, I'm coming to sleep over, just so you know. Make a room for me. I'll be up in a couple days. Oh, OS has a question. What's your question, buddy? Oh, offline. Yeah, you could reach out to us offline, OS. Hey, Matt. Idiot teenager. He feels attacked. All right. Well,
Well, Matt.
it is almost it is 10 to 10. We are
Yeah.
past our hour now, even though we had a bit of a late start. We got to wrap this up. So everybody, thank you so very much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your comments and questions and everything. We absolutely loved it. I hope you enjoyed what we put together for the Bridgewater Triangle. I thank Chad a lot for putting the bulk of this together as usual, buddy. Your research is phenomenal, man. I love the work that you do, and I appreciate it very, very much. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in. We love you all. We appreciate you all. And Chad, as always, brother, thank you, man. Had another great show with you.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. It's been fun. A lot of research, a lot of interesting stuff. And I mean, we barely scratched the surface.
Oh, God,
There are so many books about this area, so many different authors who have just specialized in just different pieces of this area between the paranormal. I mean, I've heard, I was watching a YouTube channel, and some of the EVPs that they're getting in some of these areas, and some of I'm not a big fan of some of these newer, basically spirit boxes or whatever, but they are getting responses that are, fitting for the location. Again, is that just an algorithm in GPS that's pulling, and then it's all of a sudden it's giving you, these different words that would fit the situation.
Yeah.
But like even the old EVP, the old just tape recorder recording in a room, people asking questions. I mean, in the cemeteries, they're getting 2 different females singing faintly on the recorder.
Yeah.
There was they were doing an investigation in a house, and they're talking, and they're not even really asking questions. They just have the recorder rolling, and as the 2 investigators are talking, there is a crystal clear gunshot.
I was on the fence about that one. That one to me, it just sounded like they were moving shit around and they dropped something on a table and it made like a crack sound. I know exactly what one you're talking about. I was a little on the fence about that one. It just sounded like something got put down, and the reason why they didn't pick up on it is because they were putting something down, and it was just after they were reviewing the evidence, it was like, oh, it was a gunshot. I was like, I don't know. It sounded like he just put something down or even stepped on something that made a crack sound. I don't know.
Oh,
but it's still worth noting. Still worth noting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I would like if we were doing something and listening back on stuff. I'm sure that's something that we would have pointed out and said, hey, this is kind of weird. Let's, look back on it. But
so, yeah, there's definitely, like I was saying, there's definitely some good books. I'm sure there's a lot of these modern adventure shows that film there now, that just kind of go exploring these different legends and all that. And I know they even give tours. I don't know if they do them all year round or what, but there's some groups that do some tours of the different areas. So if you're ever in the area, go visit Norm and then go take one of the tours. But
I know I will go visit Norm. Norm's awesome.
Yeah. So again, thank you everybody. And if you're really interested in it, just get on Amazon, or even just get on Google,
YouTube.
type in the area and look for books if you're interested in reading. Or
you could go down a rabbit hole with this for sure.
Yeah.
But and Ron says he had trouble getting on Facebook. Ron, you live 10 minutes away or 10 feet away from me. You could literally come up to the studio and just hang out with me, buddy. If you can't get on next time, the door's open. Just come in.
Yep.
So just put that
okay. Yep. Good night.
Uh-oh. Did you freeze in the last second, Chad? Oh, there you are. There you are.
Oh.
See, and that's another thing, not to keep dragging the show on. I'll wrap it up, but I'm at full signal and you've been freezing up a lot. So we were trying to figure it out why the stuff was freezing.
The worst thing is I'm at way more signal on the router extender, but yet on the screen where it shows the signal, it has been a yellow triangle for the last half hour.
Get out of here. All right, something's going on. We need to find a new platform. If anybody out there listening knows a good podcast platform, we use Be Live, and I'm not very happy with it. So if there's another, I think there's Stockyard and something else that you could do a live podcast on, send it over our way because I think I'm ready to make a change. So, all right, on that note, again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Chad. I had a great show. I had a great night. We'll talk to you guys in 2 weeks, and I don't know what the topic is, but we'll let you all know.
Yep. See y'all later.
Good night.